Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right, today we are diving right into a conversation that I think every business owner out there today listening needs to hear. Listen up. If you've ever felt like maybe you're working nonstop, probably won't because you are, right? And but not really seeing the financials that you deserve, right? And that return. So maybe the money, maybe it's about the money, right? And maybe it's become a little more stressful for you to run this business. And instead of being a great reward, this episode is going to be for you because our guest, Bruce Baker, joining us again, founder and strategist, of course, is here. And he really helps entrepreneurs build and rebrand their relationship. And he's helping you with that relationship with money. He's developed a very simple but powerful tool called the Money Outcome Matrix. It's already been helping people shift from survival mode into strategic growth. And we're going to unpack what this matrix is, why money should never be your goal. Wait, what? Yeah, keep listening. And how to start taking actions that actually lead to financial freedom. Bruce Baker, how are you today, darling?
Not bad, Jill. How about you? Thanks for having me again.
Thank you for being here. So much information, powerful. You're back with us today helping, and we are excited because we're going to start here. You're saying money's not the goal. This kind of confused me and probably
Oh
some of
yeah,
our listeners out there. So, can you explain exactly what this means?
Ab- absolutely. I thought it'd get some eyebrows to rise, but most entrepreneurs don't realize that we're in a dysfunctional relationship with money. We've been wired to see money as the ultimate goal, but believe it or not, it's not. The
Yeah.
truth is, money is an outcome, not a goal. It's a reflection. It's a mirror of actions, decisions, and behaviors we take in our business. So, if we want different financial results, we don't start by chasing more money. We start by shifting how we behave and where we focus our energy in making that happen. In other words, money being the outcome.
Got it. All right. So you shared a really interesting perspective about, people. And I need you to kind of, if you can, talk about what really the money outcome matrix is and how it's helping people understand this pattern of financial freedom.
Well, where I want to start, Jill, I think would help the listeners and everybody else listening about this is that where does this all come from? So that money isn't the goal. So
Yes,
the
yes,
goal
yes.
it goes all yeah, it goes all the way back to the roots of how value was exchanged. So before money even existed, what did we do? We bartered, right? So a
True.
baker traded for bread. Traded bread. A healer offered care.
Oh,
A
yes.
weaver
Mm-hmm.
exchanged fabric, right? So there's no currency. It was just contribution. You acted based on what you could offer, and someone else exchanged something of value in return.
Yep.
So in that case, the behavior and the action came first. The outcome was the value you received. So eventually, money shows up as a tool in our history, but it's never been the point. And
Yeah.
that's the issue. It's just a mirror. It's a reflection of how clearly and how constantly we're showing up with value.
Got it. All right. Sorry for that jumping the gun here. My
That's
computer's a little
okay.
sticky with our questions, but so amazing. So you're saying many people then are, businesses are stuck in the survival mode. So what does that really
Yeah.
look like in real life?
Well, fear, right? Scarcity. So remember, human beings, we have a natural aversion to loss. And our brains, like you
Yeah.
and I have discussed in previous episodes, our brains are in survival mode first. Our brains are not there to necessarily make us happy.
Mm,
They make us survive first. So the pressure is to hit revenue numbers. When money becomes your identity or your measurement of worth, it drives reactive behavior. So you underprice or you over deliver and these or you avoid taking strategic risks, not because they're bad ideas,
yeah.
but because
Because
you're trying to survive, right? And that's where you get stuck in what I call that survival mode, or the lizard brain, as we talk about, gets in that flight or fight situation. So what happens over there is our brains they protect us. We go in that protective mode. We're in that fear scarcity place, and money is not something that's going to fix that. It's actually only going to exacerbate the bad or the negative where you're at that point, if that makes sense.
it does. Well, so let's go over what is the money outcome matrix exactly. Walk us through what it is and how it's helping people.
Oh, absolutely. So the money outcome matrix, if viewers can just imagine this, it's a simple but yet a really powerful framework to help you see where your current actions and emotional investment are leading you financially. So there are two key variables, if you can imagine this. The first one is action quality. That's the y-axis going up, right? These are your decisions, clear, strategic, and consistent. Are they clear, strategic, and consistent? So the more they are, the higher it goes on that side of the axis. Then the other side is the emotional investment, and that's, are you engaged, focused, purpose driven? Okay, so when you come across these two dimensions, you land in one of the four quadrants, and those four quadrants are either thriving, stressing, coasting, surviving. It helps you assess, am I doing the right things in the right mindset to allow money to show up? And Jill, your question associated with the everyday in the real world, right? It's there's so many matrices out there, there's so many methods out there, etc. But this one, if you really think about it and you really take a couple of minutes just to think where you land, and when you see where you land, you start asking the questions, okay, how is this actually impacting me, my behaviors first, my actions first? And as a result of me maybe not having the money or having the money stress, I want to encourage listeners to go back to this matrix, look at your behavior and your actions first. And I can almost guarantee you're going to, it's an absolute liberating experience. Your eyes open up and you start to realize where the issues actually are.
Well, walk us through some of this if you don't mind. There's quite a few quadrants, right? Is it four in the matrix? Explain it.
Yeah, so there are four sections in the matrix. So if I could try to use my hands just to provide some explanation. So you've got, if you look at a block broken up into four sections, you've got the y-axis going up, and that's the action quality. So it's basically looking at whether your decisions are clear, are they strategic, are they consistent, right? So that's the matrix going up this way. And then you've got that x-axis, the one going at the bottom, is that emotional investment. Are you engaged, focused, and purpose driven? So when we look at the top block at the top, just in the top left, if you will, that's the thriving, right? The other block is stressing, coasting, surviving. So
Mm.
what listeners can do is see where you sit, put yourself in that matrix, and then give yourself the opportunity to ask yourself some questions. Okay, well, if I'm coasting, for example, and I'll give
Mm-hmm.
you a practical example in a couple of seconds, but if I'm coasting, well, I'm moving, the stress is not too high.
Got it.
I'm surviving, I'm doing what I need to do. But a lot of typical entrepreneurs get really, they get bored, they get apathetic in this area. But then when we are thriving, for instance, and not in that coasting or surviving, we're not, the stress is not
Yeah.
taking over, right? We're actually focused on actions. And I've seen this over and over again when I can finally take an entrepreneur, finally take a business owner and help them move to that thriving area. The question is always the same. It's like, okay, so the money's coming out.
Yeah.
I don't have the money concerns at this stage. I'm really, really busy because I'm taking the right actions. I'm behaving the right way. And many of them say, well, maybe it's just because our sales increased, or maybe it's just because our margins increased. Most of the time when we go back and we analyze that, nothing really has changed. What has changed is the behavior and subsequent action that the entrepreneur or the business owner is taking, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Thank you for that. And also, let's move on down if we can. My computer's stuck here. So what do we have next?
All good. Well, let me give you an example of how a
Yes.
business owner might use it. Okay, so let's say you're working super hard, but you're stressed, you feel that you're underpaid, your business is not being profitable, and a big thing we all struggle with is we're burnt out, right? You're likely in a stressing quadrant. You're
Yeah.
emotionally invested, but your actions aren't strategic or sustainable. So I don't know if you remember last week we spoke about the four E's of
Yeah.
execution. And people are highly emotionally invested. They really want to do it, but they try so hard, and when their actions move into a certain place where reality sets in
Mm-hmm.
and nothing is happening for you, it kills us. It puts us right back to the
Yeah.
beginning, which disengages us. Now, if we get back to this quadrant that I'm talking about today with you, if you're in that stress quadrant, you're emotionally invested, like I said, but your actions aren't getting you anywhere. They're not strategic, or they're not sustainable. Now, if you step back and ask, what behavior or system is out of alignment? Look at the actual things, right? The behaviors, the actions, the systems, procedures that are out of alignment. You may realize your pricing is inconsistent. Spoke to a client yesterday. She's in dire straits financially, and we looked at pricing that she never even thought of, right? So in this case, let's say the pricing is inconsistent, or you're saying yes to the wrong clients, maybe. Fixing that, it just moves you closer to that thriving zone. It puts you in that reality where you start asking the right questions, taking the right actions. What happens when we feel motivated? What happens when we feel that, hey, I actually accomplished something? It just gets that pendulum swinging. It's like the warm airwaves just pushing you up until you can zoom out, diagnose a real issue, reset your focus on the inputs, not just the income, which is the outcome, right? And a little bit of a tongue twister there. So again, you resetting your focus on your actions, right? Not just waiting and wondering why the money or the financials in the business are not there, if that makes sense.
So we're into, obviously, we did our four quadrants, and I'm having trouble scrolling through all of these. So please help me out here, right? Because
Okay,
once you know where you're at, we got to figure out where we're at, right? And then
100%.
how do we figure that part out? And then how do we move towards the thriving?
Right, right. Well, the thriving, how we move toward the thriving is finally taking a stance. So I'll give you an example of a real client interaction I had about 3 years ago. The gentleman's name is Nick, and you know, sales weren't there. Money in his mind, money wasn't there. Owed a bunch of taxes, a lot of debt, and I started talking to him about, well, let's look at the systems. Let's look at what decisions you're making. And as much, very polite, of course, as much as he was trying to get with the program, work with Bruce, work with the methodologies, he was struggling. And I asked him the question. I said, what's the first thing you think of before you go to sleep at night? What's the first thing, Nick, that you think of when you wake up in the morning? And he smiled at me and looked at me. He says, you know what it is. And I said, well, you tell me what it is. And he said, money, 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 money. That's all he said. And I said to him, this is where I need you to trust me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I said, I don't want you, and as hard as it may be, I don't want you to think of money. And finally got to a point where it was a mechanical shift for him, no doubt, where stop thinking about that. Well, that wasn't his stress. I wanted him, weirdly enough, to move the stress to those behaviors, to those actions. And finally, one of the key things we started discussing is his sales and marketing team. And long story short, we started finding irregularities or inconsistent, actions or behaviors from the team. And there was very little accountability. There was very little measurement. And I always say, if you're not going to measure something, don't even bother managing or even trying to do anything with it. And that became his stressor. And that's the right stressor to have, because what happened? That moved him to action, but moved him to started, like I said earlier on with this matrix, allowed him to zoom out and say, okay, if I take those actions based on a better behavior that I need to put forward, then theoretically this should change. So he moved himself, not easily, but he moved himself into that place. And guess what happened? Profits started coming, debt started reducing, and weirdly enough, revenue or sales started to increase because he changed the action to try to achieve the outcome. For him, the biggest stressor was financially, I'm in big trouble, and he's thriving today.
I love hearing stories like this. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty more stories like that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say this, just a quick final thought, Jill, on this process is a message to everybody that's listening. If you are a business owner, regardless of, where you're at in your business growth, um, stop making money your North Star. I understand that it's not
Mm-hmm.
how we were brought up. It's not how we're programmed.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately moved us in a place where our relationship with money, our understanding of money, has become unhealthy, and as a result, has started to diminish or erode business function, the credibility in business. Right. So businesses opening up or running and growing a business is hard and difficult, but it also needs to be exciting. Right. So money is not your north star.
No.
It's not the finish line. It's a reflection of your clarity, consistency, and contribution. When you shift your focus to delivering value, taking aligned actions, and leading with purpose, the money follows. It is easy as that. Not because you're chasing it, but because you're earning it in the oldest way possible by showing up with real value, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And
Yeah.
I want to hear some more examples. And yeah, this is interesting. The whole mirror and, the measure of worth, but we're going to get to that. Keep
Yeah.
going. We still got more time.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? One of the things that I say to people is that um, as much as I've been and my company and team have been blessed with a lot of success when it comes to things that we do, we also, we don't always succeed, right? And one of the primary reasons we don't succeed or something doesn't succeed in certain cases is primarily because of the person or the entrepreneur or business owner that just can't move past what's holding them, what's making them stuck. And in actual fact, we've got a client currently that we've been working with, oh gosh, for many years, and we helped this business grow from a $500,000 per year income to today, where they're sitting at about $4 to $5 million. And the client has taken, it's a manufacturing client, and the client has taken a tremendously huge growth curve. And as we've said a couple of times, Jill, growth is not always a positive thing. You've got to be cautious and navigate through your growth curves very carefully. And unfortunately, and it required us to come back to this client after about 2 years, and she ended up in trouble again because growing too quickly, not making the right decisions, got the best of her and got the best of the team. And currently, and I know she will succeed again without a doubt, but currently the biggest struggle is trying to move her out of her own way. And the primary reason why she's in her way is because she goes to sleep at night. She always talks to me about, Bruce, you know what? I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and my heart is just beating out of my chest. I'm worrying about how I'm going to pay the debt. I'm worrying about how I'm going to get to payroll next week. And the crazy part is when you ask and, like I said, zoom out and look in, guess what's happening or what's not happening? The actions are not there that are conducive to moving her into a more positive environment. So why I bring this up is because I want listeners to know that it's not always the silver bullet just by opening up a book or getting a new model or a matrix. It's about truly investing your time, in this case taking 10 minutes. That's it. Zooming out, looking, plotting where you are at, and truly taking the action, change it. It's not that difficult, but I tell you one thing, it'll give you a huge return on your investment without doubt.
But that's really working on changing that whole mindset, right? So you're working
Absolutely.
on that. Explain that part.
Yeah, yeah, and this, it's funny as much as our society, especially from a westernized standpoint, we've made huge strides in scientific endeavors, and everything has to be the logical,
Hmm.
rational component in how we make decisions. Hey, I'm the first person to advocate for that, absolutely. However, what we don't realize, and what we don't give much homage to is this mass of nerve tissue between our ears, right? It is it is an incredibly powerful instrument that we've all been blessed with. But what we
Yep.
don't realize is how this power, how this strength can actually be our undoing. And what we've done, unfortunately, is that we've moved away from the mental component because over the decades, unfortunately, there's been a lot of negative talk about the emotional fluff. So naturally, we've been programmed into not taking that into consideration, but yet it is the only reason, and I can promise you this, it is the only reason why a business succeeds and why a business fails is because of the
Interesting.
emotional content that drives our behavior, our decisions, and our subsequent actions that we take.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And wouldn't you say that money really is a mirror then, not a measure of worth? Can you just explain really what that means? And it's fascinating to hear because I think a lot of us do focus on money, money, money. But you're
Yeah,
right. This whole mirror, it's not. It's that other goal, but we always do focus on the money. That's why we're failing like this. Ah, and
absolutely.
yeah, and you're going to give us some takeaways too. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the money mirror component. Remember, money. It's like someone said to me the other day. We were talking about money in my bank account, and those numbers you see in a bank account are not exactly the money that you actually have. It is a mirror. It's a reflection
Yes,
of the bank and
true.
your status. So when we think about money as an outcome, the value, the tangible object that you or service that you provide that is valuable to someone else is measured by money, right? So, in other words, the numbers that you see are a reflection of the value you add. So, if that makes any sense, if we turn that around and it's all about the
Yep.
money being the value, then we lose sight of the actual value that we're trying to deliver. The money is a reflection of that value, but yet what we've done is we've turned it the other way around, where the money becomes the ultimate goal and objective, as opposed to what we actually deliver.
Mhm. Interesting. Thank you. All right. What's our takeaway from today, Bruce?
Our takeaway again, as always, I highly encourage people. I'll give you some more information of where people can find this matrix. There's a little ebook coming out as well very shortly, and some blog information. People that are listening in, don't just listen, right? Do. Uh, we as human beings, especially business owners of the world, entrepreneurs of the world, a lot of us getting into a good place in our businesses where traction starts to take place. Unfortunately, we become a little apathetic. We become comfortable. And I
Yep.
want to encourage people, don't fall in love with the vision. Don't fall in love with what the outcome is going to look like. I want you to fall in love with the actions that are
Mm-hmm.
taken. And that is critical. So listen to what we are talking about this morning. Have a look at that matrix. Give us a shout, send us an email, do whatever you have to do to fall in love with what it's going to do for you, right? Take those actions.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bruce. We appreciate your time here as always.
Thank you.
How can we reach out to you? Would you mind sharing all the contacts?
Of course, yeah. So, of course, our website, www.4, the number 4, workplaces.com. Please send an email to info@4workplaces.com. Always love emails and responding to emails. And really, most importantly, please give us a shout, 780-850-6957. That's also our WhatsApp number. Always willing to have a good conversation with people and love to hear people's thoughts and ideas.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bruce. Have a great day. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, you
And
too.
enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Jill. Take care.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.